This is a little town called Soquel. And we're going to turn left here and go to the next little town to the south, which is Aptos, Santa Cruz County. Yeah. If we just talk about the Santa Cruz Mountains for a minute. Primary trees that grow here are redwoods. There are 3 redwoods in the world. 3 members of the sequoia family. We have the local one here, the coast redwood, Semper sequoia. Another one that grows in the Sierras, places like Yosemite. That's the Sequoia gigantea. And then the 3rd member of the sequoia family grows only in China, although we have a few that I brought back from Hong Kong years ago. It doesn't make a very good Christmas tree because it's deciduous. It's all the leaves fall off in the wintertime. So of the 3 members of the sequoia family, we have 2 of them here in California. The 3rd one is in China. We also have a lot of Douglas firs, which have totally different growing habits than redwoods. And then the popular deciduous trees would be tan oak, California big leaf maple. So between those few species, that accounts for 99% of the trees you see growing around here. In terms of tree maintenance, the redwoods probably pose way more than half of the tree problems that these tree guys have to deal with. And it has to do with the fact that they grow really fast. So they grow, believe it or not, upwards of 2 to 3 feet per year when they're young. And so that goes on for the first 100 years or 150 years. And then gradually that growth rate slows down. Once they get up to, let's say, 200 feet or so, it slows down a lot. And then the last 2,000 years of their life, they grow very little at all. So the problem is aggravated by the fact that they grow fast, number one. And they also have an unusual root structure. So unlike an oak tree, for instance, or even a Doug fir, the redwood's roots are all within about 6 feet of the surface of the earth. So, and they go out laterally to 100 feet or more. They go out laterally even to the point where they interact with other redwoods. 2 roots from 2 different trees will touch each other, and they will actually make a connection between those 2 roots. And now those 2 trees can actually talk to each other in a sense that they share moisture and nutrients, and unfortunately, occasionally disease, although redwoods are very, very resistant to almost every disease that occurs in trees. It's rare that you see a redwood die from some kind of a disease. That becomes a problem when people start building houses out in the forest, and they dig a foundation and build a house and so forth, and they love having the trees around the house, of course. And then 5 or 10 years later, all of a sudden these redwoods are 3 times the size they were when they built the house, and they start interfering with the septic system. They break up the foundation of the house. It can cause all kinds of damage. So that opens up possibilities that these tree trimming guys have lots of work ahead of them, because there are many tens of thousands of people living in these mountains. Yeah. And every house has the same kinds of problems. I guess that means that at least more than half of the tree work that's done by these contractors is probably associated with redwoods. One other thing about these redwoods is broad, shallow root system, which you would think is not very efficient, and it's not, because they don't go down deeply like most other trees do for moisture. So the way they get their moisture is, you can see them along here. They're very tall, of course, and when the fog comes in, and it does come in almost every night during the summer, fog condenses on the upper branches of these redwoods and drips to the ground. And that's where the redwood gets its moisture. whereas the oak tree next door gets its moisture mostly from 20, 50, 100 feet down. So in addition to the redwoods, the next most prominent tree in this area would be most likely the Douglas fir. The Douglas fir is not even a fir tree, although it looks very much like a lot of different fir varieties. It got misnamed, I don't know, 150 years ago or whatever it was. Whoever named it, some guy named Douglas, I suppose, looked at it and thought it was a fir, and so it got named Douglas fir. It turns out it's a totally different species that just happens to look like a fir. So its proper name is Pseudotsuga menziesi, and it is indigenous to pretty much the entire western 1/3 of the nation. They even grow in the Midwest. I think they probably did not evolve there, but they're really hardy and they'll tolerate just all kinds of climate. The Doug firs these days have one very prominent problem, and they didn't actually understand this. Scientists didn't actually understand this thoroughly until just recent years, but there's a disease called Phytophthora. I think I don't know if it's a rust or I think it's a rust. Anyway, it lives in the ground, and for centuries it's been a problem for grapevines. Vineyards all over the world have Phytophthora, and they're constantly battling that problem. Well, about 20 or so years ago, the oak trees in this area started they didn't know what it was at the time. They started getting Phytophthora. Still is called sudden oak death syndrome, SODS, S-O-D-S, sudden oak death syndrome. So it first attacked our local tan oaks and the black oak and the valley oak and all of the other members of the oak family. And there are lots of these little scrub oaks that you see here and there. But it was devastating for the tan oaks, which are very common here. And after a decade or so of dealing with that problem, it was finally discovered that the Douglas fir is actually an alternate host to this Phytophthora. So it was actually aggravating the problem with the oaks. Totally different species was actually harboring this Phytophthora and worsening the problem. Well, in many cases, when a Doug fir gets that Phytophthora infection, it's able to fight it off and survive, but a lot of times it doesn't. And so as we drive along here today, we'll probably see quite a few dead or dying Douglas firs, and that's more than likely what's going on. Full-grown tree like that will all of a sudden start looking kind of peaked, yellowish. And within maybe 2 years or 3 years, it'll be completely dead. So that's good fodder for these tree guys. So these Doug firs die, and they have to be removed. And oftentimes, like those are 100 feet tall. Those are actually deodar cedars. So these Douglas fir that keep dying in rural residential areas, the fact that they often reach 100, 200 feet tall before they are affected, they have to be carefully removed, or if they're allowed to fall on their own, they're going to crush your car, or worse yet, your house. So that's good work for these tree guys.